Stenger, former Tacoma City Councilman and current curator of the current exhibit of the Tacoma Historical Society. Tom, thanks for sitting down with us.
Yeah, this is great.
So, firstly, what can you tell us about your time on the Tacoma City Council? What were your goals, and what changes did you feel you helped make?
Oh, well, I ended up being able to serve 3 terms on the council. I was elected in '83 and in '87 and then in 2003. And my particular focus was on delivering basic services on the part of citizens that oftentimes the basic services like the police, the fire, the streets, and the library are overlooked when somebody has an idea or a project and they want to go off and do things. So I think probably my biggest accomplishment was on the council last time is when I got on the council, we were down 45 police officers to our authorized level, and to focus and to pressure the manager and to push with the other members of the council so we could get our police force up to the main level. We had people like this Kevin Phelps, who was on the council, wanted to close down fire stations and libraries. So keeping the fire stations and libraries open was a big thing, and it was a struggle. And then working on getting more money spent on the streets, and significant more money, 1% loan from the state, and other sources, so we could be able to be, filling up the potholes and stuff. So I'd say those are the things I really focused on, and I would say those were accomplishments. Even though I, would like to have gone further in all those things, and I was able to.
Yeah. So you grew up in Tacoma.
Yes.
You said you were 4th generation.
Yes,
Tacoma?
both sides. Both my mother's and father's family were here in territorial days.
So what has it been like growing up in Tacoma and seeing all the changes it's gone through?
Well, for those of us who've been here and forever, it's always been sort of a thing where Tacoma's just on the cusp of doing something great. And people come along and they all have these great ideas, and if we only do their great idea, then everything will be fine. It's like we built that Tacoma Spur, the freeway that cuts through back behind Union Station. That was going to solve all our downtown problems. And you go through those things again and again and again, and when you want to see something that really works. Now, the problem we have right today is that whereas we have a real estate boom, or have had a real estate boom, we really haven't had economic development, all the way across the board. And so what's happened is, this real estate boom, what's happened is it's priced so many people out of housing. And there's so many people like me who've owned my house for 20 years that now couldn't live anywhere else because I couldn't afford to buy my house again. So it's a mixed sort of feeling about what goes on here, because, for those of us who've been here long enough, remember that we used to have a much the standard of living was much better, and the dollar went much further. And so Tacoma becomes popular, and it doesn't have its dirty image anymore, and people want to move here. And I've had all these people move in my neighborhood, and now we have these $300,000 houses in my neighborhood, whereas we didn't have anything like that before.
Yeah, I mean, and also you have this kind of growing gap between the rich and poor.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, do you see that sort of division occurring more between North and South Tacoma?
Well, it's not so much there. It's all over the place. There are 5 districts in the city, and I represent what's known as the 3rd district, which is basically from the county courthouse to Cheney Stadium, from 6th Avenue out to the mall. And my district was so different than the other ones because a majority of people in my district were renters, whereas most of the people in the other districts were homeowners. So you had to look out for the people who were the renters, and they tend not to vote as much. They don't tend to participate in the government as much. So you have to work even harder to look out for them. But yeah, I see that gap. It's happened. People who were small business people that I know, that they were a tenant in a building, and when the building was worth $150,000, they were paying so much rent. Somebody else comes by the building for $400,000, and that guy expects almost 3 times as much rent coming in because he paid so much more for the building. And so there's dislocation of businesses too. So I see sort of the hurt in all this that what goes on. I see how people life has been made more difficult, as opposed to if you read the News Tribune all the time, and the News Tribune business columnists and those sorts of things, you think everything is on the up and wonderful.
One thing that people do suggest about kind of the up of Tacoma is this bustling art scene. Do you see that as well? Do you feel like the art scene has really developed here?
Oh, I think it's done much better, and it fills the streets on certain nights like tonight, Thursday. And yes, it's much better than what it was, say, 20 years ago. And so yes, and I think particularly that we're saving more of our architectural heritage, our art there, frozen music, if you will. And that's one of the things I think has really progressed along, is people put much more value in the landmarks.
So, as you said, you've lived in Tacoma for quite some time.
50 years.
How did you become involved with the Tacoma Historical Society, and what interests you about the history of Tacoma?
Well, we've had the Washington State Historical Society in Tacoma for a long time, and a large portion of what the State Historical Society has is Tacoma stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the State Historical Society moved up from their Ferry Museum building to the building they now have on Pacific Avenue. And they weren't going to display as much Tacoma stuff as before, because it was going to be a more statewide emphasis, which was good. And so I had the idea, along with Caroline Kalachi, who's a professional historian here in Tacoma, that we should have our own historical society. And so we came up with that idea somewhere in the mid to late 80s. I think maybe it was, must have been about 1987 or so that we came up with the idea, and so that's how we got the Historical Society started.
Mm-hmm. And your interest in history, where does that kind of come from?
Well, it's from living here forever.
Yeah.
It's actually my family collecting things. Like, that's my great-grandmother's painting up there. That was her brother who painted that, actually. And so I grew up around this sort of stuff, but also that my father was a history teacher for the Tacoma district for many years. Mm-hmm. And so grew up with history around the dinner table and world problems and civics and things like that. And so I took a liking to it. And what happened is, about the time that I was 14 years old, I was a customer of the Fox Book Company, which was our great used bookstore in downtown Tacoma. And I convinced Mrs. Fox to give me store credit. So 14-year-old, I had store credit, and I then had the opportunity to start buying all this Tacoma stuff.
So I'm told you are the big history buff in Tacoma. You are the know-it-all. So I'm going to give you somewhat.
I don't know if that's. I would defer to people like Dr. Magden, Ron Magden, Bob Cheda. There are any number of people who are up there or know more about it than I do.
But you're pretty good.
I'm only 50 years old,
okay.
So I don't have the memories that so many of our other people do.
Well, let's see what you do.
Is this a quiz now?
It's a little bit of a quiz, so let's see what you do know. So early in the 1990s, as we were kind of talking about, Tacoma made steps to revitalize its image and move away from sort of the kind of more crime-ridden area of Washington State. So what steps were involved with that, and how are those practices still present today?
Well, the most important thing was the involvement of the citizens. Mm-hmm. And that we had our Hilltop Action Coalition in our neighborhood. I live in Hilltop. And then we had the Safe Streets Otherwise. And it was about the citizens getting involved. It's organizing a block. I would point out my own neighborhood, the 8th and I neighborhood. We call ourselves 8th and I because for a while in the mid-90s, 8th and I was the top homicide location in Tacoma Pierce County. During most of the decade, it was South 23rd Street, but we were there for a while, and people were getting killed. And there was a meth lab in an apartment building, and the meth lab blew up, and the apartment building burned down, among other things. And so we went to directly try to fight the crime, to fight the bad, but we realized we had to promote the good in order to get rid of the bad. And so we came about to decide we wanted to have a park in our neighborhood. So if you go up there, Neighbors Park, the 8th and I Park, and everything that we got together, and then we asked people to give us money, like the government, and things like that. And that's how we cleaned up so we have a very quiet part of the neighborhood now. You used to hear gunfire all night. And this has gone on in so many other areas around Hilltop and around the city that people just decided they were just tired of all this stuff going on. They were tired of the crack houses. They were tired of the guns in the night and those sorts of things. So people worked on that. And because they worked so hard on it, we also got a police department that wanted to work on that also. And so during that period of time, particularly with Mayor Karen Vial, we started what was known as community policing. That instead of the focus of being on 911 emergency response, the emphasis became more on crime prevention. Setting up situations so the crime doesn't happen in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So it was really the community involvement.
Absolutely. The police could never do it on their own.